Once upon a time, there was a driver who was traveling along a busy roadway. The 5 lanes going each direction were crowded and traveling at approximately 50 miles per hour, 80 kilometers per hour. The driver felt comfortable with the speed, even though the roadway was unfamiliar. Along the sides of the road were signs warning that road construction loomed ahead. The driver began to slow down since the brake lights on the vehicles ahead began to glow. And then suddenly 5 lanes shrunk to the space of 3, and there was no paint on the road. Horns blared, hazard lights flashed, tires screeched. Everyone was confused. Where were the markings for the lanes? Where was the driver supposed to guide their vehicle? What space was their responsibility? In what ways was the driver to manage their vehicle in proximity to others? All of these questions swirled within the driver's head. The driver's heart rate increased. They held their breath. What did the driver need to do to navigate this situation with safety for themselves and others on the road? This is a story of how leadership can be at various times. We can be traveling along when suddenly we are thrust into a situation we are unsure how to navigate. In today's world, our society needs robust and thoughtful leadership, especially in times of change where the lines may be non-existent on our journey. Robust and thoughtful leadership requires continued growth, as well as support along the way. Leadership in these unprecedented times can no longer be done alone. Maybe it never could.
At LeaderWise, we are passionate about healthy leadership and wise decision-making. We don't need to look very far to see examples of damaging leadership and the ramifications of poor decisions. It's likely that some of you watching this video have scars from harmful leadership behaviors. We work with leaders every day, and our experience says that one of the first steps in guarding our own leadership behaviors is to consider our boundaries. Where is our lane, and how do we navigate uncharted paths going forward? While boundaries can be thought of as protecting ourselves and those we serve, it is also worth noting that boundaries can provide ways of leading that can promote sustainability and well-being. Boundaries are everywhere, from the borders of countries to private property lines, from lanes for operating a vehicle to lanes on the track for the 400-meter dash. Even children are taught to stay inside the lines when they are developing fine motor skills by learning to color. We also know that there are appropriate times and ways to cross those lines. A visit to another country with passport and visa in hand is an acceptable way to cross the border. Allowing the neighborhood children to cut across the corner of your yard might be perfectly acceptable. Taking the shoulder of the road in order to swerve around debris might be necessary at times. For races longer than 400 meters, the runner cuts across the lines and gets to the inside of the track. And yes, artists intentionally color outside the lines. The fluidity of boundaries or lines can be necessary and complicated. The examples we just described are physical boundaries, yet they are great metaphors for the boundaries we need in our relationships, both personally and professionally. Holding and honoring healthy boundaries is a skill that can support our resilience and our ability to lead well.
While boundaries are ever present, it might be helpful to give some distinctive definitions. Dr. Joe Nash articulates 7 different personal boundaries. Boundaries that we as humans can hold for ourselves and boundaries that need to be honored for others. The first one is physical. The physical boundary is the boundary of a person's privacy, their personal space, their body. The next boundary is verbal. A verbal boundary includes what we say and how we say it, our choice of language, and what we are comfortable or not comfortable discussing. There is also a mental boundary. This boundary allows for the freedom to have our own thoughts, values, and opinions. Another type of boundary is an emotional boundary. This boundary is focused on our feelings, as well as our emotional availability for others. Even though we care deeply for someone, there may be times we do not have the capacity to be emotionally available. The internal boundary is our capacity to self-regulate, to monitor our thoughts and emotions, plus choosing our actions. This includes how much energy we expend on ourselves and on others. The next boundary is the temporal boundary. This boundary is tied to the ways we spend our time and how much time we give to a person or a project. The last boundary of the 7 types that Dr. Nash defines is the material boundaries. This is the boundary that deals with our decisions about our possessions and money. While boundaries can be clearly defined, it isn't always clear as to where the lines are within our relationships, whether personally or professionally. To add to the complexity for leaders within faith communities, the boundaries can be somewhat fluid. Most of the time, it's not as easy as do this and don't do this. Questions exist, such as, can clergy be friends with people who are part of their faith community? If your car breaks down, is it acceptable to call the auto mechanic who attends your church? When is a gift from a congregation member too expensive to receive in good conscience? Is it a respectable practice to go out to eat one-on-one with a person from your faith community? Faith leaders find themselves in murky spaces often. Other professionals have very clear boundaries around their professional relationships.
Think about a therapist or a medical doctor. There are parameters as to how much time is spent together or how much personal information is shared from professional to client, including contact information. It's all very clear. Typically, doctors don't share their personal mobile numbers with their patients, and yet clergy often do. Therapists have hours they are available and hours they are not. Clergy have daytime hours and evening meetings and weekend gatherings, whether social events or worship gatherings. When it comes to ministry, the boundary lines can be blurry. Ministers are involved in people's lives, caring for them when needed versus by appointment only. Walking alongside people and offering your presence is the nature of ministry. It is a noble calling, and that exact nature of the calling can make it challenging to make healthy boundary decisions. Since boundaries for faith leaders can be unclear at times, it could seem that there is little we can control.
However, Henry Cloud and John Townsend, authors of When to Say Yes, How to Say No, to Take Control of Your Life, remind us that there are areas for which we are responsible. They remind us that we are in charge of our thinking and our feelings. While thoughts and feelings can surface very quickly, we are responsible for determining which thoughts and feelings we want to feed and which ones we want to notice, but then redirect. For any of us, if we spend time encouraging damaging thoughts or feelings, it can derail us. Consequently, we must pay attention to both our thoughts and feelings. Our behavior also is within our responsibility to manage. From how we communicate to facial expressions to bodily actions, our behavior is ours to manage. When we behave inappropriately, we can cause harm, and our actions can have negative consequences. Our thinking, our feelings, and our behaviors are ours to manage. And so are our values. We get to decide what we give importance to and how we utilize our time and resources. Knowing your core values can empower you to make wise decisions that align with your values. It is helpful to acknowledge that the more privilege a person has, the more able they are to choose their boundaries. And those with less privilege are likely to have less ability in shaping their boundaries.
When contemplating healthy boundaries, it is good to have an understanding of the differences between a boundary crossing and a boundary violation. A boundary crossing is a bending of a code or guideline. It might be appropriate in one instance or with one person, but not another. Boundary crossings are less harmful and not as serious. It might be working too much or too little. It might be socializing with congregation members beyond faith community functions. Maybe it's accepting expensive gifts. In each of these examples, there is a time when it might be appropriate, and there might be a time that it isn't a healthy decision and can cause some harm. One area that can be immensely challenging is that of dual relationships, the idea of not doing business or having friendships with those who are in your spiritual care. Due to the complexity of relationships within ministry, the sage advice is to avoid dual relationships. While there can be real wisdom in not having dual relationships, this is a serious challenge, especially for those who are ministering in rural communities. Again, the nuances and complications of serving others while having healthy boundaries is evident. While a boundary crossing is a bending of a code or guideline, a violation is a breaking of a code or guideline. Boundary violations are never appropriate, and have harmful and lasting outcomes. Examples of violations include having a sexual relationship with a parishioner, or physically harming someone, or stealing money from the faith community. Violations can also come in the form of unchecked impairment. An unchecked impairment can be such things as substance abuse or a mental or physical health concern that isn't being treated. The key word in the phrase unchecked impairment is the word unchecked. There are faithful ministers who are leading meaningful ministries who continue to work their program concerning an addiction. The problem would arise if they stopped doing their ongoing work. There are also faithful ministers who suffer from mental or physical health concerns who are leading meaningful ministries as they take good care of themselves. Having an impairment is not the violation. Not doing what is necessary to stay healthy and make wise decisions concerning the impairment, that's the violation. One litmus test concerning boundary violations is to consider who is being served in a situation. Whenever a faith leader exploits a relationship for their own needs instead of the needs of those they serve, it is a violation.
Through the years, it has been our observation that violations do not simply appear out of nowhere. Violations occur after multiple boundary crossings have happened. Normalizing boundary crossings and justifying those crossings lead to boundary violations. Since this is true, it is imperative that we pay attention to the boundary crossings. Since healthy boundaries are so important and also very complex, we encourage you to spend time considering how you are managing your boundaries. Where do the lines need to be drawn with pencil, and where do the lines need to be drawn with a permanent marker? And what are the signs that you might be getting too close to the line and making unhealthy decisions? Please know you don't need to journey alone as the leader of a faith community. Ongoing training alongside colleagues who can be good-thinking partners can be the difference between vibrant and wilting leadership. That's one of the reasons we strongly encourage people who are in leadership roles to participate in our boundaries training. In our training, we offer tools for making decisions. We consider how power dynamics enter into interactions with others, and we provide conversational space for wrestling with what to do when challenging situations arise. We look forward to seeing you soon.